Welcome to the Transformation Talks podcast, in-depth conversations on transformation with Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of RDNX Network.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining the Transformation Talks yet again for an episode that we are very, very excited about. Today we are going to talk all about the medium that we are currently communicating in, which is the audio medium, audio marketing, and more than just what you have heard so far. Today we have Jenny Hoffman. Jenny Hoffman is a neo-soul music fan and soon-to-be certified spiritual director who does creative strategy in that order. She's on a mission to help people unlock creative marketing with soul. Currently, she does this as a global creative strategist at Spotify. In her role, she leads her creative team's outreach strategy, facilitates brand workshops with Spotify's top partners, supports cross-functional initiatives, and after 7 years at the company, she is still figuring out how to turn on private mode while listening to her guilty pleasures playlist. Aren't we all doing that? Jenny started her career in media planning, buying strategy, new business, and business development. It was her multiple internships at Publicis and McCann that initially convinced her to join the wonderful world of advertising. Jenny has been named at the 4A's Media Rising Star, Culture Club Chair, Woman at Lead, and Global Team co-host. It's a pleasure to welcome Jenny Hoffman. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and especially, like you mentioned, in an audio format. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's an irony, right? We are discussing the growth of audio on a podcast, but let's get started. Personalization, makes marketing better, but how is audio marketing coping with the same? Can you take us through the journey of audio marketing, a bit of history, where it is today, and how is the whole personalization piece? Is it important at all in the audio marketing space? And give us your 101 on that.
Yeah, a little audio 101. So yeah. What's interesting about audio is that it's been around forever, right? Audio is nothing new. Radio was one of the first ad formats for a lot of brands and a lot of advertisers. I think back to my grandparents telling me about the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast, which, if you're familiar with it, it was an Orson Welles piece on CBS. And right. As people listened to it, they thought it was actually aliens invading Earth. It was so real and convincing that people were afraid and scared, and it really caused great chaos. What I think that shows us is that audio is a very powerful storytelling medium, right? If it can invoke that much emotion, just imagine the possibilities when it's coupled with tech and innovation and all these other incredible things we have now. So the resurgence in audio, I think, has really been happening over the past maybe 5 years, 10 years, certainly with the emergence of streaming and things like that. The personalization piece, when it's coupled together, is where it gets really exciting, right? Because I think a lot of brands are starting to understand that personalization isn't just a nice to have. It's not just a filter to put on marketing. It's actually becoming a prime driver, a core driver for marketing success. So when you put those two together, it becomes a really powerful duo. And with audio, especially on Spotify, the possibilities of personalization and audio together are really limitless, which is really, really exciting. And it really should be for brands as well.
Can you give us some examples of these personalizations that really, really work in the context of the consumer as a value to the consumer and also as a value to the brand?
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of each. So at Spotify, when we started over 10 years ago, we were really just a library of music, right? You can think about the old like Napster, LimeWire, some of these older platforms. You had to know what you were looking for, right? You would put it in the search bar, Beatles, and all of their songs would pop up, things like that. Then we moved into the space of curation because we realized, we could be soundtracking a lot of people's moments for them, a lot of genre playlists. We could help people discover music that way. And it was really what I love, a two-way street, right? We were curating content for our users. Our users were also curating moments for themselves. So they would create a songs to sing in the shower playlist, or they would create a running workout playlist. So it became this dialogue in a way. We moved from that.
And that's your form of user-generated content, actually.
Yeah, I will say playlists are kind of the social currency for Spotify. We've got now, over 4 billion with a B of them. So yes, that is really how people communicate on platform. Where we've moved to and where we've been, I think, much longer than other competitors is this area of personalization. So an example of how that's consumer facing are some of our playlists like Discover Weekly or Daily Mixes or Release Radar. So these are very personalized experiences for our listeners. If you're not familiar, Discover Weekly is a playlist that's served up to you every Monday. And it features 30 tracks that we're pretty sure you're going to like based on what you already listened to. So personalization is allowing people to, of course, have this very relevant experience for themselves, but also helping them discover new artists, new songs, new content that they otherwise wouldn't come across. When we think about that for brands, it just gets me so excited to talk about. This is what my team does. I sit on a team called the Creative Studio. You can kind of think of us like an internal shop for partners and advertisers at Spotify. Right. And for example, brands come to us all the time with briefs. We work very closely with the world's top advertisers. One program that our team did that I thought was very exciting and was a very simple example of how powerful audio and personalization can be was Michelob Ultra. If you're familiar, they're a beer company. Right. And with them together, they were able to reward people who went for runs, who were running, with a beer at the end of their workout. And how it worked on Spotify, how it worked with audio, is that we were serving ads to people who were listening to running playlists. And not only that, but the ads were extremely personalized. We were able to incorporate the city that they were going for a run in, the weather. So we would say in Mexico City, it's really hot. Prepare for your run by hydrating. Or in London, it's a little rainy, but don't let that stop you from running. Get out there. And then at the end, they were able to input their run information into a digital experience and then redeem their free beer. So you can start to understand, wow, if we have some indicators with people, and certainly that comes from personalization, from building a good analytics system and a good CRM and all that fun stuff, then you can really use that to speak to your consumers in a way that is very personal.
Very, very interesting and insightful. It almost seems like the audio format is not just a format, but almost a new ecosystem with which the rules of creativity also get new wings, and what you can do based on place, action, and things, and consumer action. The surrogate that you use at Spotify is the playlist. Is very interesting how that all works together. Tell us more about how are brands looking at this, and what are the some of the challenges that brands look at, and where does audio fit in because we all know video is the king of digital advertising today. Of course, there is search, display, and others, but video is the big piece. Where does audio fit in the overall mind share with brands?
Yeah, we've definitely seen increased interest from brands in audio, which shouldn't be a surprise. I think several reasons why audio has become so popular. One is that all of us have been looking at screens for a very long time, right? I think over the past year and a half in the pandemic, I've watched more Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus than I care to admit out loud. And so I certainly have had screen fatigue, which means that people are turning away from screens and turning on their audio devices. So they're just giving their eyes a break and letting their ears kick in, which I think makes a lot of sense.
And are you seeing that in the data that you see at Spotify?
Because on Spotify, we have built a very robust streaming intelligence platform, right? So we know not only things about the catalog of music, but also about our very engaged listeners. We see that our listeners are with us over 2.5 hours a day. Now, put that into context. That would be like watching the movie Avatar every day, right? That's a lot of time. But on Spotify, what we've discovered is that audio is a companion in a way that other formats just simply can't be. So think about it. When you are going for a run, it's a lot easier to listen to music or listen to a podcast than it is to watch a video, right? As I'm driving in LA, I think sometimes I see people watching videos as they're driving. They shouldn't, but I can listen to a podcast or a playlist as I'm commuting. So it has become really this companion for people in a lot of their key moments. And brands are starting to pick up on that. Advertising has shifted from just basic demographic information to more psychographic information to now very personalized experiences. And audio is really good at doing that. It's really good at meeting people in the moment. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities. I think the biggest challenge for brands, and certainly what I've seen in my time at Spotify, is that they think that radio is audio. And it's not, because radio is not as personal of an experience as streaming audio is. And so we have a lot of brands give us their radio ads to run on Spotify, and they just don't perform as well as they do if we were to create it for them. In our creative studio, we're constantly creating ads for the music side, for podcasts, whatever it may be. And we've just seen the power of context in doing that, right? Streaming audio is giving us the ability to put people into context and really understand who they are and what they're doing.
That's interesting. And you mentioned about how, radio content is not the same as audio streaming content, and ads need to be different as well. So how are you doing this creatively? How are you giving brands a competitive edge to optimize their audio ads creatively? Is there a mantra? Is there a framework, a structure, or is it ad hoc?
It's a great question. It's not, I wouldn't say it's ad hoc. At Spotify, we're very strategic in what we do, but we also leave room for creativity. We also leave room for the freedom of expression and the freedom of looking at data and thinking about it in a new way. So I will say that everything we do when it comes to brand partners, certainly on my team, begins with data. It begins with an interesting data point that we find in a dashboard, or it begins with something from Culture Next, which is our trends report that we do every year. So we're always interested in a hard fact. From there, we then derive the insight from it. So we then look at it and say, okay, well, if we know that, oh gosh, let me think here. A certain percentage of people are listening with their headphones in. Okay, well, that's a data point. But what does that mean? Well, it might mean that they want privacy when they're listening to something. It might mean that they're in a loud environment and they want to create a little bubble around them to make that a more immersive experience. So we start to pull out some insights. And then from there, we start to ideate and think about how a brand could really speak to a person in that moment, or really, use audio to surprise and delight them. So we do this. We've got, my team is well versed in doing brand workshops where brands can bring us a problem they're trying to solve, or they can just come to us and say, hey, we don't know a lot about audio. Can you help us? And so we'll sit and talk with them about that. So there are plenty of exciting opportunities in audio. And at Spotify, we really take each brand's challenge and apply it based on the streaming intelligence we have, the past learnings. We've been doing this for a very long time. And then, of course, the creativity that springs forth from anywhere. Creativity comes from every part of the business. So we just incorporate that in.
Interesting. And it's interesting you mentioned headphones, because one of the biggest transformations, and as we love to talk about transformations on our podcast. One of the biggest transformations is the device transformations that happened with smart speakers, wearables. Recently Bose launched spectacles that have bone conduction audio available, and that's just going to blow up as well, right? And of course, there's the whole, Alexa, Google Home, smart speaker revolution that's happening. All of this is definitely seeing impact for you at Spotify as well. As someone who's been part of this industry for more than a decade, or more than half a decade, at least at Spotify, what do you think? Where is this headed? In terms of the entire audio, device revolution that we started to see with people having smart speakers at their homes, different kind of audio embedded in different kind of wearables as well.
Oh, Rajiv, you made me sound so old now that I've been in the industry for so long. I guess with experience comes wisdom. That's okay. Yes, I think so. When I joined Spotify, I joined because I was so excited about the potential. And
Yep.
7 years later, I've stayed here because I'm still so excited about the potential. So audio innovation is just really at the forefront of, it's just beginning. There are so many exciting things to look forward to. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in, of course, voice. That's something that has really picked up in the past few years with the proliferation of smart speakers. And I think with that comes the exciting innovation of interactive media. So right now, of course, when you hear ads, you can't really interact with them. You can click on them, certainly, but you can't really speak to them. Smart speakers are changing that now. So we're seeing a little bit of that happen. But I think shopping by voice, more interactive ads, things like that are certainly
that's
the future.
very interesting. Sorry to butt in here, but the ability to take action on an ad makes the ad very powerful. And what you just made us realize that the smart speaker revolution could actually make audio ads even shoppable, so as to say.
Yes, exactly. And I do think it will take time, right? Anytime there's a major shift in consumer behavior, it takes time. We saw that in, I think, 2019, when time spent on mobile overtook television. And that was a huge change for the industry. And then from there, we saw that in the mobile time spent, audio was more popular than gaming, than social, than video. So this change to go now into voice and interactive things, I do think that will take time. I think consumers are a little nervous about privacy issues. I think they're nervous about certainly what's happened in the tech world in the last few years. And it's, it might be nerve-wracking for consumers. I do think it will catch on. It's just going to take some adaptation, some time.
Though I do feel that this whole voice and smart speaker thing is a status symbol now, right? I just moved into a new home, and every room in my house has a smart speaker. It has an Alexa, and there's automation, right? And the future does definitely mean that many of us will do that. Even from a perspective of automation and so on and so forth. And that definitely then brings the whole voice and the audio element into people's homes.
Yeah, absolutely. And home has really become this new forefront, this new exciting territory in a way that it never was before. So that's why we're seeing so many of these smart devices come into the home where people are, where they're really sharing the most intimate moments with people. And that's opened up. I mean, the goal for audio, I think, for us is for ubiquity, for us to reach people in the moments that matter most to them, no matter where they are. And the home has been a really exciting playground for that.
And because you mentioned ubiquity, do you think audio is the future of ubiquitous marketing then?
I think it's already here. Absolutely. I think there's been enough video saturation. And I do think people are just tired of looking at screens, Like Rajiv, think over the past year, how many times have you said to yourself, wow, I really need to stop watching so much Netflix, or I really need to stop, right? How many times did you say, wow, I really need to listen to less music, or I really need to stop streaming so many podcasts? Just not as much, because it's a different experience. And so for us, we're really excited at the potential of audio. I think the future of it is here, and it will only continue to grow and elevate, certainly for marketers.
And do you think one of the biggest shift has been the pandemic, which has made people sit at home, and that's making them do more with audio as well?
I don't think the pandemic has started that. I think it has changed it. And what I mean by that is, of course, when COVID began, we saw a huge shift in consumer behavior. So we saw, for example, at the beginning of COVID, commuting listening went down because people weren't going to work. But then we saw an influx of playlists around gardening, around baking bread, around all these other moments that were very specific points in time. And what I think is super interesting, we actually saw a huge increase in listening to nostalgic music, to nostalgia. And the reason for that is people were feeling more nostalgic. They were seeking comfort and security, right? That comes with listening to familiar music. And so it's just these indications that they're not new, they're just different. So that behavior was changing. And I do think moving forward, people are always, we're very adaptable. The human race is very adaptable, and audio is able to adapt with us. So I think we're just going to see that trend continue.
Also, do you think audio offers an alternate medium to niche brands and maybe B2B players, because there's so much of alternate content available on audio vis-a-vis the video counterpart?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot more potential, in my opinion. And an example I'll give, at Spotify, of course, we began as a music platform. And so when you think about the music industry, I'd say there are probably 12 main genres. You can probably name them now: pop, hip hop, rap, music like that. At Spotify, we've analyzed over 4,000 micro genres. And what I like to think of them as is that they're not micro genres as much as they are communities. So these really engaged groups of people who are listening to a very specific type of music. And what we found is that that is a wonderful opportunity for a brand to come and give value to certain communities of people. That's a really, really powerful invitation for brands. And the way that we've seen it come to life has reminded me of the power of audio and how exciting it is to start analyzing and exploring these new worlds. So there's a ton of potential with audio. There's a ton of content. There's, of course, everyone is creating podcasts. I think we now on Spotify, we've got over 2 million podcasts. And a new podcast is created every 3 minutes, if you can believe it. So I don't think that's slowing down. I think it will continue to speed up. And so the challenge then becomes, there's so much content, you need to curate it and you need to personalize it. So now we're back in that personalization field and making sure that people can find the content that you're creating.
Quickly, I mean, I know this is, but I can't help but ask you your view on Clubhouse and what it's doing with this audio chat industry and so on and so forth.
I will say I'm a big believer that a rising tide floats all boats. I think I'm really excited about the proliferation of audio and the amount of people that are taking interest in it and growing businesses around it. At Spotify, we have a platform called Green Room, which is a live audio experience. It is a wonderful platform. You can go in and join rooms of people talking about all sorts of things. And I think the power of Green Room for Spotify is that because it's attached to our brand, we have people in there from our biggest podcast talking about interesting things. We have people talking about topics that they're really passionate about around music and things like that. So I'm really excited about live audio. I'm really thrilled that Spotify's in the game. And I think it's just going to take some time to see how much consumers are really engaging with it and catching on to it.
Great. Let's do a bit of crystal ball gazing and look into the future here, and specific to audio and personalization and where do you see this decade? How do you see it evolving? And if you could give us a couple or more areas where you definitely see audio blowing up, or a certain feature or certain consumer behavior being constant or increasingly adopted by users.
Well, if I've learned anything in the past year and a half, it's that I know nothing about the future. So I will do my best and tell you some trends that I think we'll see get bigger. Sure. And certainly for audio has this innate ability to amplify a lot of other industries. And what I mean by that is that it has the potential to innovate other areas. So for example, when I look at gaming, well, we know on Spotify, a huge percentage of gamers are streaming Spotify as they're gaming. So they've chosen not to listen to perhaps some of the soundtracks that are included in the games because they play the game for hours and they want some new music, right? So they'll stream Spotify. When I think about retail, oh my gosh, the opportunity for audio and retail is incredible. Retail and I would say a few other industries have always been very visually focused. I think it's more interesting to think about what does a product sound like instead of look like? Because if you put that sound at the forefront, then you are giving consumers the power to use the theater of the mind. You're giving them the power to use their imagination and develop a connection to a product or a service that they might otherwise not. So it's a really exciting area, I think, for audio to be in other industries. I think another trend that we're going to see is immersive audio. There's been, of course, a huge shift toward immersive experiences. I think Gen Z and millennials have really have been the ones that have adopted that the most quickly. And so it will continue to happen. When I think about immersive experiences for audio, that goes into physical experiences, that goes into, of course, VR and AR and all these other exciting, innovative places. So there's a lot that's going to happen. The challenge is that a lot of tech has to catch up with it. So there's a lot of things that you need to put in place in order for it to be fully realized. But I do think in the next 10 years, we will see that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And in fact, the omnipresence of smart speakers everywhere, from your car to your homes to your phones, I think it's going to create a new revolution of voice and audio-led interactions, like you mentioned. I think this has been a very interesting insight, Jenny. I think we've come to the end of our podcast with this, but thanks so much for joining us and sharing such great insights across audio marketing and how creatively ads are created for audio, how ads should be specifically created for the audio streaming platform, how smart speakers, wearables, and others are transforming this space, and definitely how the different trends, right, from gaming listeners to others, are going to increase in the future for audio marketing. It's been a sheer pleasure having you on the Transformation Talks. Thank you for being with us and sharing all these lovely insights.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy, and I hope you'll continue to listen to Spotify in the future. Thank you.
For sure. You can catch our podcast on Spotify as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Transformation Talks podcast hosted by Rajiv Dingra, founder and CEO of RD&X Network. Tune in next week for another interesting episode.